Hello YouTube, welcome to Mr. P's AP Macroeconomics test review session. So I need to first start discussing about why you should choose to watch my videos instead of Mr. Clifford's video. Mr. Clifford's, he's actually a very humorous teacher and he explains things in a concise way. However, his videos are oftentimes very messed up, so if you go to his channel and try to find a specific concept's explanation, you'll suffer. However, in my YouTube channel, I'm just going to go through the thing that we have gone through in the class. So basically, if you have watched my videos, you should be able to know 80-90% of material and you can practice all of them just by doing some questions. And besides, Mr. P, the P doesn't stand for Peter Patterson. It just stands for procrastination. So I'm basically here for you the day before the test. Alright? Okay, Chapter 5, Measuring Nations' Income. GDP is one of the main way to measure the income of a nation. Okay, we need to first explain why income equals expenditure because we said that GDP is the income of a nation. So the expenditure of a nation, when you expend something, then the money transfers to the firm. So the firm earned the money that you have expended, and this transferring process just results in a constant amount of money to be transferred to another person. So basically, income equals to expenditure. It is very crucial to understand the formula of GDP calculation. So let's move on. GDP, gross domestic products. Okay, how do we measure this concept? This is a very weird concept that we hear all the time in the news. Basically, the formula I have created for understanding is that it is the sum. Like sigma means sum. If you are not familiar with this, I'll use my cursor to indicate that this is a sigma. Okay. Sigma is the sum of products and or services. And these services should satisfy the following criteria. Okay, first, it should be final. What does final mean? For example, I have a farmer. The farmer harvested his wheat, and the wheat was now sent to a factory, and the factory made the wheat into bread, and the factory sold the bread. So the wheat are sent first sold to the factory. This is a process of income for farmer but expenditure for the factory, but a few moments later, after they produce the bread, now it's the bread which is actually being sold and the buyers are buying the bread, and the bread is considered the final goods. So wheat doesn't impact it anymore. The wheat trades doesn't impact the price of bread anymore. Legal is basically just legal. So no black market, no drug trades, none of that. Not difficult to measure. So basically, some goods are extremely hard to measure, and most of the time people just ignore them. Well, you just need to know this. This is not oftentimes tested. Geographically in the country. This is a very important concept that we'll mention later. So you need to be geographically within the border of a country if you're calculating GDP and within a certain time range. GDP is oftenly calculated every year, so make sure that it's in the time range. Okay. Just in case you don't know goods versus services, goods is like objects, purse, sunglasses, iPad. Services are like some action that firms do to use haircut, dentist visit. So it's like something they do. Now, this is the actual formula for GDP. Remember I said just now it's basically the sum of products versus and or services. Here's the actual formula. GDP. GDP equals to consumption plus investment plus government purchase plus net export. why is the GDP here? And basically, I'm everything for GDP. GDP is basically the sum of every expenditure in the market. Like in a nation, that's just about it. And it consumption is basically what people spend their money in. For example, I probably hear some random people saying I lost all my money for all these clothes or and hairstyle that he had made for himself, she had made for himself, herself, and then that's all into the consumption for GDP calculation. And that's pretty sad that they had all of their money expended. Investment is basically what you invest into and hope for more income. Well, that's basically straightforward. So some people might say I might be reaching Elon Musk in next 10,000 years. Ha ha ha. Well, okay. Government purchases. It's just like what government spend to run the society. For example, public goods or something. But they can like overspend it or something. This is all possible. Oh, I labeled it wrong. Okay, net export. Net export is basically export minus import. I don't know how to come up with any joke for that. But in this case of America, I want to make sure that it's export minus import. So if America exported $200 billion of something and imported $150 billion, and it's like $50. Okay, real versus nominal. This is like a very important concept for this chapter. Here, like I just have stolen the chart from the PBT that our teacher has used to teach us. So, hot dog. So basically, when you're calculating nominal GDP, it's just amount of dollars times the amount of hot dog here plus $2 times 50 hamburgers. So basically, you plus them together for each year and then you get the nominal GDP. However, real GDP is derived from the base year, so there is no difference in price. But the no, quantity does change over year because real GDP is mainly measuring production. So it's like excluding the effect of inflation causing on GDP, and that still results in like the first year is always the same because it's base year, but after you have calculated, then it's like 350 for the second and 50 like 500 for the third one, and then we can calculate GDP deflator. GDP deflator is basically nominal GDP divided by real GDP. This what we will mention this one later, but I just want you guys to know that this is nominal divided by real times 100. Okay, GDP deflator. If we assume that nominal GDP is NY, real GDP is RY, then GDP deflator is NY over RY times 100%. And the inflation rate of a second year, I just as well copy the formula from the PPT. So GDP deflator in the year two is minus the GDP deflator of year one divided by the GDP deflator of year one. Okay, what does GDP deflator do? It's basically an inflation detector, like detects the inflation and indicate how much has the value of the money been decreasing. Okay, do you guys still remember I said like geographically is such an important word to notice because there are other ways to measure the overall wealth of a country, such as GNP, NNP, NI, PI, and DPI. NNP, NI, PI, and DPI are like rare. You might see them, but don't really need to know them in my opinion. But GNP is something you might need to know. GNP is no more constrained within the borders. So basically, for example, if we're measuring GDP, a Canadian guy go to America and work for a day, and his salary that he get for that single day is going to be counted as American GDP. However, if this Canadian is working in America for a day, then GNP is calculated for Canada because he is a Canadian. When GDP is calculated, it's geographically within the country, but when GNP is calculated, it's like it can be abroad, but you are still Canadian or anywhere you're from. Okay, here's basically what I just mentioned. Okay, that's it. Give a very fortunately learned all the concept in this chapter. Thank you for staying around. Get out of here.